Chapter 1. The first $10,000. The moment money stops controlling you. There's a strange moment that happens when someone reaches their first real financial milestone. It's quiet, no fireworks, no headlines, no sudden feeling of being rich. In fact, most people barely notice it when it happens. But behind the scenes, something massive has just shifted. The way money behaves around you changes. The way you think about work changes. And the way opportunities start appearing in your life changes. This moment usually arrives when someone reaches their first $10,000 net worth. To a billionaire, $10,000 sounds tiny. To someone just starting their financial journey, it can feel impossibly far away. But here's the truth most people don't realize. The first $10,000 is often the hardest money you will ever accumulate in your entire life. Not because of the math. Because of the psychology. Before this point, money tends to behave like sand slipping through your fingers. You earn it, you spend it, and somehow, at the end of the month, it disappears. Again, and again, and again. For many people, this cycle repeats for years. Sometimes decades. They assume this is simply how life works. You earn money to pay bills, survive, and maybe enjoy a few small comforts along the way. Saving feels impossible. Investing feels like something rich people do. And building wealth feels like something that happens to other people. But the first $10,000 breaks this illusion. Because reaching it proves something powerful. You are capable of creating financial momentum. That might sound simple, but it changes everything. Let's imagine two people. The first person spends everything they earn, but it has a hidden cost. When unexpected problems appear, a car repair, a medical bill, a job loss, this person has no buffer. Life becomes stressful. Every financial decision carries pressure. Every mistake hurts. Now imagine the second person. They also earn money. They also pay bills. But slowly, quietly, they begin accumulating savings. At first, it's small. A few $100s, then 1,000, then 2,000. Eventually, something incredible happens. They cross the $10,000 mark. And suddenly, their entire relationship with money shifts. Because for the first time in their life, they have options. If their job becomes unbearable, they can leave. If an emergency appears, they can handle it. If an opportunity arises, they can take it. The money itself matters. But the freedom it creates matters far more. This is why the first net worth milestone is so important. It's not about luxury. It's about control. Before $10,000, life often feels reactive. Problems appear and you scramble to solve them. Bills arrive and you rush to cover them. Your financial life feels like a series of fires that constantly need to be extinguished. But after $10,000, something subtle happens. You start thinking long term. Instead of asking, how'd I survive this month? You begin asking, how'd I grow what I have? That single shift in thinking is the beginning of wealth. Because wealth is not created in moments of panic. It is created through consistent, patient decisions over long periods. Saving $50 here, $100 there. What difference could that possibly make? But the numbers slowly grow. $500 becomes $1,000. $1,000 becomes $3,000. $3,000 becomes $7,000. And eventually, almost surprisingly, it becomes 5 digits. That's when people realize something powerful. Progress was happening the entire time. It just wasn't obvious day to day. This is the exact same principle that builds massive fortunes. But most people never reach that stage because they quit too early. They assume the early stage is proof that wealth is impossible. In reality, the early stage is simply the slowest stage.
Think of wealth like pushing a giant stone wheel. At first it barely moves, you push, and nothing seems to happen. But slowly, the wheel begins to roll. Once it gains momentum, it becomes easier and easier to keep moving. The first $10,000 is when the wheel finally begins rolling. And that's why this milestone changes everything. But there's another reason this number matters. Reaching it forces you to develop financial habits that most people never learn. Budgeting, tracking spending, prioritizing long-term goals over short-term impulses, understanding how money flows through your life. These skills are invisible to outsiders. No one applauds them, no one celebrates them, but they are the foundation behind every wealthy person's success. Without them, larger amounts of money disappear just as quickly as small ones. History is filled with examples of athletes, celebrities, and lottery winners who suddenly received millions of dollars, only to lose everything, because wealth isn't just about receiving money, it's about managing it correctly. And the first $10,000 teaches that lesson early. It builds the discipline required for the next stage, and that next stage is where things start getting interesting. Because the second milestone doesn't just give you control over money, it introduces something far more powerful, a force that has quietly built the greatest fortunes in history, a force so powerful that Albert Einstein reportedly called it the eighth wonder of the world: compound growth. Most people spend their entire lives trading time for money. They work an hour, they earn a fixed amount. Then they repeat the process again tomorrow. But compound growth changes the game entirely, because instead of trading time for money, your money begins working for you. This is the difference between running on a treadmill and standing at the base of a snowball rolling downhill. At first, the snowball is tiny, barely noticeable, but as it rolls, it collects more snow. And the larger it becomes, the faster it grows. This is exactly what happens once your net worth reaches the next milestone. The second milestone, the point where wealth stops being fragile and starts becoming self-sustaining. But before we get there, it's important to understand something many people misunderstand about money. The journey to financial independence is not a straight line. It happens in stages. Each stage requires different thinking, different habits, and different strategies. The skills that help you reach $10,000 are not the same skills that help you reach $100,000. And the mindset that builds $100,000 is completely different from the one required to build $1 million. That's why people who suddenly receive large sums of money often struggle. They skip the stages. They never developed the mindset required for the level they suddenly entered. But when someone climbs each milestone gradually, something powerful happens. Their identity evolves alongside their wealth. They become the type of person capable of managing larger opportunities. And that transformation begins with the first milestone, the first $10,000. It may not buy luxury cars, it may not buy dream homes, but it buys something far more valuable: proof. Proof that wealth is not reserved for a special group of people. Proof that consistent action beats random effort. Proof that your financial future is not fixed. And once someone sees that proof with their own eyes, they can never unsee it. The game has changed. From that moment forward, money stops being something mysterious. It becomes something understandable, something predictable, something that can be built step by step. And once that realization takes hold, the next milestone becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Because the second milestone is where wealth truly begins accelerating, where your money begins producing more money, where financial growth becomes visible, and where the journey toward real financial freedom begins. That milestone is $100,000 net worth. And for many people, reaching it feels like crossing an invisible border between two completely different financial worlds. But that story begins in Chapter 2. Chapter 2, $100,000. When money starts working for you. For most people, the journey to the first $10,000 feels like climbing a steep mountain. Every step requires effort. Every dollar saved requires discipline. But once someone reaches that first milestone, something begins to shift. The climb becomes slightly less steep. Progress becomes a little more visible. And for the first time, the idea of building real wealth no longer feels like a fantasy. But there is another mountain ahead, a much larger one. And at the top of that mountain sits the second life-changing milestone, $100,000 net worth. To many people, $100,000 sounds enormous. It feels like the kind of money only successful entrepreneurs, executives, or lucky investors manage to reach. But what most people don't realize is that this milestone is where wealth starts behaving very differently. Because once someone reaches $100,000, they begin experiencing the most powerful force in finance: momentum. Up until this point, progress mostly comes from personal effort, working, saving, controlling expenses, being disciplined. Your income fuels your progress. But after $100,000, something fascinating begins happening. Your money begins contributing in a meaningful way. Imagine two people. The first person has $0 invested. If they want to increase their net worth by $10,000, They must earn and save the entire amount themselves. Every dollar requires their time, their labor, their energy, but the second person has $100,000 invested. If that money grows by 7% in a year, something remarkable happens. Without working a single additional hour, their net worth grows by $7,000. The following year, the growth happens again. But this time, it compounds. The growth begins producing more growth. That is the moment when wealth starts behaving like a living system rather than a static number. And this is why $100,000 is such a powerful milestone. It's often the point where the snowball truly begins rolling downhill. At $10,000, growth exists. But it's small. At $100,000, growth becomes noticeable. You start seeing progress that doesn't come directly from your effort. And psychologically, this changes everything. Because for the first time, you experience what wealthy people have always known. Money can create more money. This realization completely alters how someone views work, investing, and time. Before this point, money feels scarce. Every dollar is hard-earned. Every mistake feels painful. Every financial decision feels heavy. But after crossing the six-figure net worth line, money starts to feel like something that can multiply. And multiplication changes the game. This is the stage where patience becomes incredibly powerful, because compound growth doesn't move in straight lines. It moves slowly at first, then suddenly, dramatically faster. Let's imagine a simple example. Someone invests $100,000 and earns an average return of 7% per year. After 1 year, their money becomes $107,000. That might not seem dramatic, but over time, something fascinating happens. After 10 years, that money becomes about $196,000. After 20 years, it becomes $386,000. After 30 years, it becomes over $760,000. And that's without adding another dollar. This is why the second milestone is so important. It's the stage where time begins working with you instead of against you. When people start investing late in life, they often feel like they're racing against the clock. They must contribute massive amounts of money to catch up. But when someone reaches $100,000 early, time becomes their greatest ally. Every year that passes allows compounding to accelerate. This is why so many financial experts say the first 6 figures is the hardest, not because it's mathematically difficult, but because it requires the longest stretch of disciplined effort before compounding becomes obvious. Before $100,000, growth feels slow. After $100,000, growth becomes visible, and visible progress is incredibly motivating. It turns saving into a game, it turns investing into a strategy, and it turns long-term planning into something exciting rather than restrictive. But the $100,000 milestone also introduces something else: responsibility. Because once someone reaches this stage, the financial decisions they make begin carrying greater consequences. Poor investments, emotional decisions, chasing trends, panicking during market downturns. These mistakes can erase years of progress. And unfortunately, many people learn this lesson the hard way. They reach $100,000, they feel confident, they take risks they don't fully understand, and suddenly, the momentum they built disappears. This is why discipline becomes even more important at this stage, because the goal is no longer simply to accumulate money. The goal is to protect and grow it intelligently. People who succeed at this stage develop a long-term mindset. They stop chasing quick wins. They stop looking for shortcuts. They begin focusing on consistency, steady investing, diversification, patience. And over time, those simple behaviors compound into extraordinary results. There's another psychological shift that happens around the $100,000 mark. Confidence. Not the loud, flashy kind of confidence, but a quiet, internal certainty. Someone at this stage has already proven they can save money. They have already proven they can invest. They have already proven they can resist lifestyle inflation and short-term temptation.
That proof becomes incredibly powerful because it builds identity. Instead of thinking, I'm trying to build wealth, they begin thinking, I'm the type of person who builds wealth. That identity shift changes future behavior.
It changes spending habits. It changes career decisions. It changes how someone approaches opportunities. Because people who see themselves as builders of wealth tend to make decisions aligned with long-term growth. But before we get there, it's important to understand something fascinating about wealth. The distance between financial milestones often shrinks over time. The journey from $0 to $10,000 may take years. The journey from $10,000 to $100,000 might take several more. But once someone crosses $100,000, the next milestones often arrive faster. Because now, three powerful forces are working together: income, discipline, and compounding. Each one amplifies the others.
Chapter 3, $1 million, the freedom threshold. There's something psychologically powerful about the number 1 million. It has represented wealth for generations. Movies talk about it. Books talk about it. People dream about it. For decades, becoming a millionaire was considered the ultimate financial goal. And while inflation has changed the purchasing power of $1 million, the milestone still represents something incredibly important. Not just wealth, freedom, because reaching a $1 million net worth often marks the point where money begins providing true independence. Not complete independence for everyone, but a powerful form of flexibility. To understand why, we need to revisit the concept introduced in Chapter 2, compound growth. When someone has $1 million invested and earns a modest 7% annual return, something remarkable happens. Their wealth grows by about $70,000 per year. And that growth happens whether they work or not. Whether they wake up early or sleep late. Whether they accept that next job opportunity or walk away from it. Their money continues growing. This is why the third milestone feels so different from the first two. At $10,000, money provides stability. At $100,000, money provides momentum. But at $1 million, money begins providing choice. Choice is the true currency of wealth. It's the ability to decide how you spend your time, where you live, what work you accept, and what work you refuse. People often imagine that millionaires spend their lives surrounded by luxury and extravagance. But many millionaires live surprisingly ordinary lives. They drive normal cars. They live in comfortable but modest homes. They continue working. The difference isn't always visible from the outside. But internally, everything feels different. Because the time begins feeling abundant again. Think about how most people experience their careers. They work because they must. A paycheck is required to survive. Even if they dislike their job, leaving feels risky. Responsibilities demand stability. But when someone reaches the $1 million milestone, that equation changes. Work becomes optional, not necessarily unnecessary, but optional. And optional work feels completely different from mandatory work. It allows someone to pursue projects they genuinely care about. It allows them to start businesses without fearing total financial ruin. It allows them to negotiate their career from a position of strength. Because they no longer need immediate income to survive. This shift creates one of the most powerful psychological changes wealth can offer. Peace of mind. Financial stress is one of the most common sources of anxiety in the modern world. People worry about bills, debt, job security, unexpected emergencies, retirement. But when someone has accumulated significant wealth, those fears begin fading. Life still contains challenges, but money is no longer the center of every decision. And that mental space creates room for something else, purpose. Many people discover that once survival is guaranteed, they begin asking deeper questions. What kind of work do I actually enjoy? What impact do I want to create? How do I want to spend my time? Some people continue building businesses. Some pursue creative passions. Some dedicate their time to family, community, or philanthropy. Who reaches this milestone discovers the same truth. Money itself was never the ultimate goal. Freedom was. And freedom is measured in time. Time to explore. Time to learn. Time to build meaningful relationships. Time to create something that matters. But there's an important detail many people misunderstand about the millionaire milestone. Most millionaires didn't get there overnight. They didn't win lotteries. They didn't discover secret shortcuts. Instead, they followed the same pattern we've discussed throughout this video. Small progress, consistent investing, patience, compounding. The $1 million milestone is rarely the result of a single dramatic event. More often, it's the result of thousands of quiet decisions made over many years. Choosing to save instead of spend. Choosing to invest instead of speculate. Choosing patience instead of impulsiveness. And over time, those decisions build something extraordinary. Because wealth doesn't just grow financially. It grows behaviorally. The habits that build $10,000 evolve into the habits that build $100,000. And those habits eventually become the habits that build millions. This is why the three milestones matter so much. Each one represents a transformation. The first transforms your relationship with money. The second transforms how money grows. And the third transforms your relationship with time. Together, they form a journey. A journey that begins with discipline and ends with freedom. But perhaps the most important realization is this: these milestones are not reserved for a special group of people. They are the natural result of consistent financial behavior over long periods of time. The numbers may vary, the timeline may vary, but the pattern remains the same. Small beginnings, gradual progress, accelerating growth.